They say our bodies tell our stories. Mine tells stories I never lived. Every tattoo on my skin is a stolen memory, etched in agony, a mark of someone's final breath. They appear when someone dies close enough for my soul to feel their echo. 2. Weeks ago, I woke with a full sleeve I didn't have when I closed my eyes, and the weight of it screams killer. That same night, a little girl stood trembling at my door, her arms scarred with truths I wasn't ready to face. A woman followed, swearing she hasn't seen her own reflection in 20 years. What happened next? It's carved into my nightmares forever. If you're drawn to dark, twisted tales that claw at your soul, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next shadow that finds you. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart hammering, like a war drum, not from a nightmare, but from pain that seared like a branding iron. It felt like a molten blade had carved into my arm while I slept, slicing through flesh and sanity. I tore back the blanket, and there it was, a tattoo, fresh and uninvited, a woman's face frozen in a scream, tears streaking her inked cheeks, her eyes wide with terror that felt alive. Behind her a shadow loomed, gripping something sharp, something hungry. I knew what it meant. Someone had died. Someone close enough for my skin to steal their final desperate memory. But this tattoo was different. It pulsed with a raw, suffocating dread, as if I could taste her fear in the air, as if her racing pulse was mine. My chest tightened, my breath shallow, like I was running from the same blade. Before I could steady myself, a knock shattered the silence. Soft, hesitant, but heavy with purpose. When I opened the door, a little black girl stood there, soaked to the bone, her pajamas clinging to her trembling frame, her wide, haunted eyes locked onto mine, carrying a weight no child should bear. "I think this one's yours," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. She lifted her arm, revealing scars jagged, deliberate, mirroring the screaming woman on my skin. The girl, Lila, wouldn't cross the threshold at first. She stood shivering in the downpour, her small fingers tracing the scars on her arm as if they might vanish, or, worse, deepen. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant. "Lila," she murmured, barely a breath. I coaxed her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, and pressed a mug of tea into her hands. I tried not to stare at the scars, too precise, too cruel, like someone had etched them with a blade and a purpose. "Where are your parents?" I asked gently. Her head shook, a silent refusal to answer, her eyes darting to the floor. Before I could press, another knock came sharp, urgent, 3 raps that vibrated through my bones. When I opened the door, my breath caught. A woman stood there, tall and drenched, her black coat clinging like a shroud, her face. It was the crying woman from my tattoo, alive and staring back at me with eyes that burned with secrets. "Ethan Cross?" Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, trembling like leaves in a storm. "That's me," I managed. "I'm—" "Mara," she said. "I need your bathroom, now." The request was so strange, so raw, that I stepped aside without a word, her urgency pulling me into her orbit. Minutes later she emerged, her face pale as death, fury flashing in her eyes. "I couldn't see her," she said, her voice low and jagged. "See who?" I asked, my pulse quickening. She locked eyes with me, and the air grew heavy. "Myself, I never see myself, only my mother. And she's been dead for 20 years. Mara wouldn't sit. She paced my living room like a predator trapped in a cage, her eyes flicking to the windows, as if the shadows outside were watching her back. Lila sat curled on the couch, silent, her gaze fixed on Mara, not with fear, but with a knowing that chilled me. "Do you know her?" I asked Lila. Her head shook too quickly, a practiced motion that screamed lies. Mara froze mid-step. I think you have something of mine. I rolled up my sleeve, the tattoo blazing under her stare. The crying woman's face seemed to pulse, her inked tears glistening with unnatural life. Mara's lips parted, her breath catching. That's her. Who? I pressed. My mother? The room turned to ice, the air thick with unspoken truths. I think she was murdered last night. Mara said, her voice fracturing like glass. And you carry her last memory on your skin. I wanted to ask how she could be so certain, but Lila's voice cut through, sharp and steady. She's lying, the girl said, her wide eyes boring into Mara. Mara's head snapped toward her. What did you say? Lila stood, her blanket falling away, revealing fresh, angry scars snaking up her arms like a map of pain. That's not her, Mother, and I can prove it. Lila approached me with a purpose that made my skin crawl, her small hand outstretched. In her palm lay a scrap of paper, damp and crumpled from the rain. This was in her pocket, she said, nodding toward Mara. I took it, my fingers trembling. The ink was smudged, but the words clawed at my gut. He has her now. The man with the ink. My stomach churned, dread pooling like poison. Mara lunged forward, snatching the paper. Where did you get this? I told you, Lila said, her voice unshaken. You were carrying it. That's impossible, Mara snapped, her eyes wild. I've never seen it before. The air crackled with tension, a storm ready to erupt. Lila turned to me, her voice low and piercing. She's not the one you should be afraid of. Why? I asked, my throat dry. She rolled up her pajama sleeve. Beneath the scars, faint but unmistakable, was a shape, a face. My face. I couldn't tear my eyes away. My own likeness, etched in pale, ghostly ridges across Lila's arm, screaming silently through her scarred skin. I don't understand. I stammered, my voice breaking under the weight of it. It means you were there, Lila said, her words a quiet accusation. Mara folded her arms, her gaze sharp. So which is it, Ethan? Are you the messenger or the killer? I wanted to scream at them to leave, to escape this suffocating nightmare, but my head throbbed with a void, a gap in my memory. A black hole between midnight and dawn. I didn't leave this house, I insisted, my voice hollow. Lila tilted her head, her eyes unyielding. Then why did I see you in the alley behind the church? You were carrying someone, and you looked wrong. Wrong how? I demanded, dread coiling tighter. Her voice dropped to a whisper, each word a needle. Like the tattoos weren't on your skin. They were under it, moving like shadows trapped inside you. I locked myself in the bathroom, my breath ragged, needing a mirror to anchor me. I rolled up my sleeve, staring at the crying woman's face. For a moment, it was still just ink, just art. Then her lips twitched. I stumbled back, my shoulders slamming into the door. The ink didn't blur or fade, it moved. Her mouth shaped a single, silent word. Run. My pulse roared in my ears. This isn't real, I muttered, gripping the sink to steady myself. But when I looked again, the shadow behind her had shifted, its knife raised higher, closer to her throat. A fist pounded on the door. Ethan? Myra's voice, sharp with urgency. I'm fine, I lied, my voice cracking. But in the mirror, the shadow's head tilted, and I swear it was staring right at me, its eyes burning through the ink. Lila's voice came soft and chilling from the other side of the door. She says you're next. I opened the bathroom door, my hands shaking. Mara stood there, pale but resolute. Lila hovered behind, clutching her blanket like a shield. You saw the tattoo move, didn't you? I asked, my voice barely holding. Mara hesitated. Not yours, but I've seen it before, on my father. Lila's head snapped up. Your father? Mara nodded, her voice heavy with memory. He got his first tattoo after my mother died. Said it appeared overnight, just like yours. It haunted him, Ethan faces that weren't his, whispering in his dreams. What happened to him? I asked, dreading the answer. Her jaw tightened, her eyes glistening. One morning we found him in the kitchen, standing, eyes open, not breathing. He'd carved the last tattoo off his own skin, as if he could cut the curse away. The room shrank, the air suffocating. Lila shivered. Did it stop after that? Mara's gaze locked on mine, unyielding. No, that's when it appeared on someone else. Mara's words hung like a noose. That person was a child, she said. Lila stiffened. How old? 8, Mara replied, her voice steady but laced with pain. Lila's fingers dug into the blanket, her knuckles pale. That was me. My throat closed. You're saying you had these tattoos before? Lila shook her head, her voice trembling. Not tattoos, scars. Every morning, new ones, shapes, faces, like something was carving its story into me. Mara stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. The day your scars stopped was the day my father died, and the day they started. For me, I whispered, the realization sinking like a stone. The three of us stood frozen, trapped in a silence that pulsed with dread, as if the curse itself was listening. Lila broke it, her voice small but resolute. Maybe it doesn't care who it uses. Maybe it just moves on when it's done. Done doing what? I asked, my heart pounding. She met my eyes, unflinching. Finishing the memory. That night, sleep was impossible. I sat in the dark, the lamp off, staring at the ink crawling up my arm like a living thing. The tattoo had changed. The crying woman's mouth was closed now, her eyes sharp and accusing. The shadow behind her no longer held a knife, it clutched something smaller, metallic. A key. My skin prickled, a chill slithering down my spine. Then I noticed it. The woman's gaze wasn't forward anymore. She was looking to the side, her inked eyes fixed on Lila, asleep on the couch, her scarred arms exposed. I shook Lila awake, my voice urgent. What if this isn't about the past? She rubbed her eyes, groggy. What do you mean? What if it's showing me something that hasn't happened yet? Mara's voice cut through from the dark corner of the room, low and heavy. Then we either have time to stop it, or it's already too late. We were all awake now, the air thick enough to choke on. Come here, I said, pulling up my sleeve. The three of us watched as the ink began to move, not slowly, but in sharp, violent strokes, like an unseen hand was sketching over my skin. In real time, the crying woman was gone. In her place, a door-old warped wood, peeling paint, a keyhole glinting faintly. The key hung from a tattered string, swaying in the ink. It's real, Mara whispered, her voice trembling. I've seen that door. Where? I demanded, my heart racing. She hesitated, her eyes distant. In my father's basement. The shadow in the tattoo grew darker, its form stretching until it consumed half my arm. A second figure appeared, small, fragile. Lila gasped, her voice breaking. That's me. The shadow's hand reached for the smaller figure, and the key began to turn. Mara stepped back, her face drained of color. If it's turning now, we're out of time. Mara drove, the rain pounding the windshield like a heartbeat. No one spoke. The silence was louder than the storm. Her father's house loomed ahead, abandoned and decaying, its boarded windows like eyes that refused to open. Paint peeled like old wounds, and the air carried the faint tang of rot. This is it, Mara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Inside the house was a tune-stale air, dust thick enough to taste, and a metallic undertone that set my nerves on edge. The basement door matched the tattoo, perfectly warped wood, cracked paint, a keyhole that seemed to stare back. Lila's voice trembled. It's the same. Mara unlocked it with a key she swore she hadn't touched in years, her hands shaking. The hinges screamed as the door opened, a sound that echoed in my bones. The basement was empty, no furniture, no boxes, just bare cement walls, cold and unyielding. But across the far wall, painted in jagged black lines, was my own face. My breath stopped. It wasn't just a likeness, it was me, every detail perfect, my eyes wide with a terror I didn't yet feel. Mara turned to me, her expression unreadable. Maybe you're not just the messenger after all. I couldn't look at that wall. It felt like it was watching me, waiting. Back in Mara's car, I rolled up my sleeve and froze. The tattoo had spread, black lines snaking up my shoulder, curling across my collarbone, creeping down my chest. Faces formed and dissolved before I could grasp them, screaming silently in the ink. Mara saw it, her voice tight. It's accelerating. The car felt like a coffin, the air suffocating. Lila sat in the back, hugging her knees, her scars glowing faintly in the dim light. "You're not telling him?" she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Not telling me what?" I demanded, my patience fraying. She lifted her head, her eyes locking onto mine with a weight that crushed. I've seen you before, years ago. The night I got my first scar." I shook my head, my voice rising. "That's impossible. I didn't know you then." "You stood in my doorway," she said, calm but unyielding, "watching me sleep, and you had no tattoos at all." Lila's words were a blade, each one slicing deeper. "You stood there for so long I thought you were a dream," she said. "But then you walked in." My throat tightened, my pulse hammering. "And what did I do?" "You touched my arm," she said, pointing to her wrist. "Right here." It burned like fire. "And when you left, the scar was there." I shook my head, desperate. "I couldn't have—" "You could," Mara interrupted, her voice cold and certain. "If it works like my father's did, the transfer starts with contact." I pressed my palms to my temples, trying to claw through the fog in my mind. "Why would I—" Lila's eyes glistened, her voice trembling but resolute. "Because you weren't alone. There was someone behind you, taller, in the shadows." "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She swallowed hard, her words. "A quiet thunder. It looked like you, but older. Like time had carved you into something colder." The rain drummed against the car, loud enough to drown my thoughts. "Older me?" I said, a bitter laugh escaping. "That's insane." Mara shook her head, her voice low. "Not if it's not really you." "What are you talking about?" "My father called it a shadow host," she said, her words heavy with dread. "It wears you like a mask, uses your body until it's finished." Lila's voice was barely audible, and then it moves on. I felt cold, like the air itself was draining my warmth. "Moves on to who?" Neither answered, their silence. A scream of its own. I pulled back my sleeve. The tattoo had spread further, curling down my other arm, faces I didn't know writhing in the ink, their eyes pleading, accusing. Mara's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "If it's older, it means it's done this before. And if it's here now, it means it's almost done with you," Lila finished, her voice steady but laced with sorrow. "We didn't return to my place. Mara drove to the edge of the city, to an abandoned overpass where the streetlights flickered like dying embers. The world felt fragile, ready to shatter. If it's almost done with you," Mara said, her voice low, "there's only one way to stop it." "Which is?" I asked, my heart pounding. "You give it something else to take." Lila's eyes widened, her voice trembling. "You mean me." Mara's silence was an answer, heavy and cruel. "No," I said, my voice rising. "It started with me. It ends with me." But even as I spoke, I felt at the tattoos crawling, faces twisting. my skin burning as if the ink was alive, hungry. Ah! Memory surged, unbidden, sharper than any before. I was in a room, the air thick with fear. The crying woman from my tattoo stood before me, alive, trembling, her eyes begging for mercy. And I held the knife. It wasn't possession. It wasn't an accident. It was me. In that moment, as the shadow wrapped around me like a second skin, I understood. The curse wasn't collecting random deaths. It was keeping trophies. My trophies. And now it was carving its final mark into me, into Lila, into the very air we breathed.